In the quiet hours before dawn in 1835 South Texas, a rancher jolts awake to blood-curdling screams. Comanche warriors descend on 11 fur traders, ambushing their camp in a whirlwind of arrows, war cries, and scalping blades. All 11 lie dead, marking yet another grim chapter in the decades-long resistance waged by these plains horsemen. Their raids, deadly and frequent, left thousands dead as they fought to defend a homeland stretched across the southern plains. But what drove the Comanche to strike with such fury? And how did a small group of Texas Rangers turn pursuit into a battle that foretold the Comanche's slow eclipse? This is a story of valor, calculation, and a clash that shaped the frontier. In the violent saga of Texas-Comanche conflict, 1835 stands out as a turning point. The Republic of Texas had just declared independence, yet its hold on the land was fragile and fiercely contested. At the center of this resistance were the Comanche, rulers of the Comancheria. 240,000 square miles of territory stretching from the Arkansas River to the Rio Grande, bigger than modern France. Far from being scattered raiders, they were a mounted empire. Historian Pekka Hämäläinen calls their raid-based economy a strategic system of resource extraction built on capturing horses, goods, and people to fuel trade networks that reached from Mexico to the northern plains. Despite losing half their population to smallpox since the 1770s, their numbers in the 1830s remained strong, 20,000 to 30,000. But as settler trails blocked buffalo herds, Comanche raids escalated, colliding with the vulnerabilities of isolated Anglo outposts. One such clash, near Gonzales, would pit Comanche speed and pragmatism against settler hubris and immobility. John Castleman, a real-life figure remembered in early Texas frontier lore, wakes with a start on his ranch west of Gonzales. Just beyond his property, Comanche warriors are locked in brutal combat with a group of French and Mexican fur traders who had camped nearby the night before. The raid, drawn from 1830s accounts along the Guadalupe River, reflects a hard truth. European confidence in superior firearms often blinded them to the realities of Comanche warfare. Castleman's ranch, like many along the frontier, stood exposed. The Texas State Historical Association estimates over 1,000 settler deaths in raids by 1840 many during this turbulent decade alone. Castleman had warned them. The night before, he'd offered the traders shelter in his fortified cabin, urging caution. Comanche attacks in 1834-1835 had surged dozens of raids, scores dead, livestock taken. But their leader, a proud Frenchman, waved off the danger. He pointed to their guns, pistols, rifles, and insisted they were prepared. They camped along the river, exposed and confident. It was a fatal mistake. As Hämäläinen notes, the Comanche were experts in dawn attacks, trained over decades against Spanish and Mexican foes, striking fast, vanishing faster. Castleman, no stranger to danger, readies his rifle and bars the door. His wife, calm but firm, pleads for silence. They hide, holding their breath, while outside the battle rages. Tales of raids had traveled fast, families slaughtered, captives vanished. According to historian T.R. Fehrenbach, these stories turned the Texas frontier into a land of constant dread. By the 1830s, over 500 settlers had been taken, many adopted into Comanche society or traded far north. One Comanche breaks from the fight, walking toward a tree with a weathered paper nailed to it, Castleman's target from earlier practice. Castleman raises his rifle. He could shoot, but his wife's whisper stops him cold. Lower it. He obeys. That moment captures life on the edge, aggression balanced against survival. Fehrenbach noted that many settlers lived by staying hidden. Unless provoked, Comanche rarely wasted effort attacking fortified homes. They had other priorities. The fight drags on until late morning. Despite their firepower, the traders fall overrun by lances and arrows. When the dust settles, the Comanche claim the scalps. To them, it's not senseless violence, it's a spiritual victory. As Hämäläinen explains, scalping held deep cultural meaning. Settlers saw it as barbaric, but even before Europeans arrived, it existed across the plains. Colonial governments later made it worse, offering bounties for native and settler scalps alike. And then, in a moment, Castleman never forgot the Comanche ride past his home. Silent, disciplined. They do not stop. They disappear into the wilderness, heading northwest. Why spare him? Maybe it wasn't mercy. Maybe it was pragmatism. As Hämäläinen notes, raids focused on Gaines horses, weapons, supplies. Warriors were too valuable to waste on low-return fights, especially as disease thinned their ranks. Cholera alone killed thousands in the 1830s. After they vanish, Castleman steps out. What he sees is horror. 11 dead. Bodies mutilated. Arrows bristling from every limb. Weapons gone. Livestock gone. Blood soaking the black earth. To the Comanche, it was a clean operation, quick, brutal, and efficient. It wasn't mindless. it was survival. These raids weakened settlers and strengthened the Comanche Empire. But it wasn't one-sided. Settler expansion had disrupted buffalo herds, brought famine, and sparked retaliation. Historian Doug Swanson describes the aftermath as a cycle of violence, ranger, retribution, raids, and what he terms an ethnic cleansing campaign. With no survivors left, Castleman knows what he must do. Ride to Gonzales, warn the Rangers, and set in motion the next clash on the plains. The Texas Rangers began in 1823, when Stephen F. Austin informally organized 10 men to patrol the frontier. By 1835, a colonial council formally established the Corps of Rangers tasked with protecting Texas during a time of growing conflict. These early Rangers weren't trained soldiers. Most were volunteers, motivated more by revenge than strategy. But their emergence reflected a deeper historical cycle. Comanche raids weren't random acts of violence, they were strategic responses to settler expansion. Buffalo herds, once numbering 30 to 60 million, were being slaughtered. Sacred lands were being occupied. According to historian Pekka Hämäläinen, the Comanche fought to preserve their way of life, a nomadic world built on expert horsemanship and wide-ranging mobility. Yet the Rangers' legacy remains contested. In Texas lore, they're celebrated as heroes. But in Cult of Glory, Doug Swanson calls them out for brutal campaigns, village burnings, forced removals, and ethnic cleansing during the Indian Wars. Both sides suffered deeply. By 1840, over 1,000 settlers had died in raids. At the same time, disease, cholera, smallpox ravaged the Comanche, cutting their numbers from 40,000 in the 1770s to 20,000, 30,000 by the 1830s. It wasn't one-sided. It was a grim balance of devastation. Horrified by the slaughter, Castleman and his wife ride east 15 miles to Gonzales. It's a dangerous journey. Another ambush could strike at any bend. When they arrive, they alert the Texas Rangers. Panic spreads. The news travels fast. Another Comanche raid. And one more reminder of a deadly pattern. In the 1830s, the Comanche struck remote outposts across the Guadalupe. Hundreds died. Over 500 captives were taken, some adopted, others traded. These attacks weren't just terror, they were strategy. A way to push back against Anglo expansion, which was choking the buffalo herds that the Comanche relied on to survive. A response is swift. Rangers and volunteers gather and elect Captain Bartlett D. McClure to lead the pursuit. McClure, already a well-known figure in Gonzales, had served as the county's first Chief Justice and led patrols since 1831. After learning the direction of the Comanche retreat from Castleman, the group heads northwest, following the Guadalupe River. The early Rangers lacked formal training. They relied on local knowledge, fast action, and grit. Swanson, in Cult of Glory, writes that this kind of pursuit often blurred the line between defense and offense. Retaliation turned into escalation, and these cycles devastated native communities for generations. The Texans follow a clear trail. The Comanche had made no effort to hide their path. Speed was the priority. Their horses, unmatched in endurance, could cover 50 to 70 miles per day. The Rangers knew time was slipping. Every hour lost meant miles gained by the raiders. This chase wasn't just tactical, it was symbolic. Across the frontier, Comanche mobility outpaced settler defense. They could strike hard, then vanish, leaving chaos behind. Then a sign. Crows, circling low over scraps of meat and discarded supplies. The Texans turn north. They take this as more than a clue, it's almost a sign from above, but it's also practical. Crows often followed nomadic groups, feeding on what was left behind. In the hill country, nature became part of the hunt. This mix of superstition and survival defined the early Rangers, but they were always chasing warriors who knew the land better, who had lived and fought on it for generations. As night falls, the group camps near San Marcos. Sentries are posted. Everyone remains alert. Around midnight, Scout Andrew Soule hears something. High-pitched chants echo through the darkness. He thinks it's a Comanche victory song. But when he reports to Captain McClure, the captain isn't convinced. Probably coyotes, he says. In the hills, sounds bounce strangely. Coyotes had fooled many before. Still, the moment unsettles the camp. And it reflects a common problem. Frontier war blurred the senses. Echoes could deceive. Fear magnified everything. Like the 1838 ambush at Arroyo Seco, where Comanche forces killed several rangers by surprise, night sounds often meant danger. At sunrise, they find proof, a recently abandoned camp. A tall wooden pole stands at its center, the symbol of a Comanche war dance. It's a place of victory, a ritual site for honoring scalps and spoils. The Texans realize they missed them by hours. But they keep moving. The trail leads northwest, into the Blanco River Valley. These chases defined the frontier identity. Grit, endurance, relentless pursuit. But as historian Swanson points out, they also marked the beginning of something darker. The raids and counter-raids didn't just clash, they crushed. And over time, the pressure helped break the Comanche world apart. In the winding valleys of the Blanco River, the 1835 clash, often overshadowed by legendary events like the Alamo, where 189 defenders died in 1836, offers a glimpse into the tactical brilliance on both sides. About 30 to 40 Comanche warriors, the typical size of a raiding party, used their deep knowledge of the terrain to set ambushes. In response, the Texas Rangers answered with disciplined rifle volleys, showing an evolution in how settlers fought back. This wasn't a simple tale of good versus evil. It was a collision between Comanche sovereignty built on trade routes and mobility across 240,000 square miles and the expansionist drive of Anglo settlers. Arrowheads and rifle balls found in the Blanco region confirm the battle's authenticity. Historian Pekka Hemailainen calls such battles imperial rivalries. The Comanche launched over 100 raids per year in the 1830s, responses to buffalo herds vanishing under settler pressure. Meanwhile, Doug Swanson, in Cult of Glory, accuses the Rangers of colonial violence. Many of their campaigns blurred into scorched earth warfare that killed thousands. Both sides paid the price. By 1875, over 2,000 Comanche had died in Texas conflicts, mirrored by heavy settler losses, a grim equilibrium of resistance and retribution. As morning mist lifts, a lone Comanche warrior appears on a nearby hill. Dressed in war regalia, mounted on his pony, he lets out a piercing war cry. From the brush, dozens more emerge and ambush in motion. These surprise attacks were honed through decades of warfare, like the 1758 Red River Battle, where Comanche allies routed 500 Spanish troops. The dense brush and river channels of the hill country made it easy to trap enemies in tight spaces, then crush them in panic and confusion. Captain McClure recalls past victories like the 1835 Rio Blanco skirmish and gives a daring order: charge forward. It's a bold move. Most men would run. But McClure knows retreat invites a trap, encirclement, and slaughter, as had happened to Spanish and Mexican forces before. His men, though mostly untrained volunteers, follow. It's a risk, but also a sign of how the Rangers were adapting. Raw grit, tempered by hard-earned discipline. Galloping over rocky ground, they reach a thick grove too tangled for horses. The Texans dismount, advance in single file. Scouts Almiron Dickinson, who would later die at the Alamo, and James Darst push ahead to check the enemy's position. It's risky, but necessary. This was Comanche terrain. Ambushes here had cost the Rangers dearly, like the Arroyo Seco fight in 1838. Moments later, the brush erupts. Shots crack, branches splinter, dirt kicks up. Dickinson and Darst burst back, yelling warnings. They split left and right to clear the line of fire. Their quick thinking prevents friendly fire, no small feat in the chaos of forest fighting, where confusion often led to deadly mistakes. McClure fires first, his flintlock drops the lead pursuer. Castleman follows with another clean shot. 2 bodies fall, stacked in the dirt. But Andrew Soul's rifle misfires, his powder is wet, a common problem in Texas humidity. Misfires like this had turned the tide in many fights. Luckily, covering fire from nearby Rangers saves him. These weapons weren't reliable. Flintlocks misfired up to 20% of the time in damp air. In contrast, Comanche bows could shoot 20 arrows a minute, making them deadly in close-range ambushes. The Texans burst through the brush, reaching the riverbank. A full-on melee breaks out. The Comanche, realizing the risk of losing more warriors, choose to retreat. Their goal wasn't to die gloriously, it was to preserve warriors and safeguard loot, horses, weapons, and supplies. Hemailainen notes that this pragmatism kept the Comanche Empire alive. While they gave up ground, it kept their fighters ready for the next raid. Rangers would later claim victory in over 50 skirmishes by 1840, though many ended this way, with Comanche withdrawing by choice, not force. Soul redeems himself. He takes down the final Comanche, cornered on a steep riverbank. Not a single Texan dies. It's rare. So rare, it becomes part of Ranger legend, especially in Soul's own memoirs. But legends often leave things out. Estimates say 5 to 10 Comanche died here. Their families, back at camp, would mourn and remember, passing down the story through oral tradition. Swanson argues these losses, repeated across years, chipped away at Comanche strength. Raids, losses, and Ranger pressure became a slow-motion collapse. As the dust settles along the Blanco River, the 1835 skirmish minor when compared to the Alamo, where 189 Texians died in March 1836, leaves lasting echoes. Though small, it shaped lives and deepened the broader Texas-Comanche conflict. At the time, the Texas Rangers numbered fewer than 100. but by the 1840s, they had become a powerful force. Their victories symbolized Texian resilience, but they also fueled cycles of vengeance that dragged on for decades. Historian Doug Swanson, in Cult of Glory, describes the Rangers as instruments of colonial expansion. Their raids, village burnings, and scalp bounties pushed the Comanche closer to collapse alongside smallpox and cholera, which had already cut their numbers from 40,000 the 1770s to 20,000, 30,000 by the 1830s. On the other side, Pekahemela Inen's The Comanche Empire shows the Comanche not as aggressors, but as pragmatic warriors. Their raids, over 100 per year in the 1830s, were survival tactics. They fought to protect their way of life from settlers who had wiped out buffalo herds, driving them toward extinction by 1875. From 1821 to 1875, roughly 1,500 settlers and 2,000 native people died in the Texas Comanche Wars, a brutal balance. This one clash on the Blanco was just a glimpse of the broader war, but it foreshadowed how the Comanche would eventually fall through endless campaigns, epidemic disease, and the mass killing of buffalo, which numbered fewer than 1,000 by the 1880s. It raises difficult questions. What was the true cost of manifest destiny? As T.R. Fehrenbach writes, "The frontier was not won by heroes alone, but by a collision of cultures where both sides paid in blood." Back at the river, the Texans regroup. They're alive. No one died in the fight, but for a moment they notice one man missing. Soon he reappears, panicked, disheveled, barefoot, his hat and rifle gone. He had fled during the ambush. This moment, preserved in frontier tales, shatters the myth of fearless rangers. Fear touched everyone, settler and Comanche alike. Native warriors also rode into battle knowing they might not return, leaving families behind to grieve. The Rangers gather what the Comanche left behind: weapons, furs, trade goods. Then they begin the cautious journey back to Gonzales. Their safe return was rare. Ambushes like the 1838 Arroyo Seco massacre had killed many Rangers, but this time, they made it back untouched. Most returned to their farms. But some, like Andrew Sowell and Matthew Caldwell, became legends. Sowell later wrote his memoirs, fought in the Texas Revolution, and preserved the memory of this brutal frontier. Caldwell, later known as Old Paint for his sun-spotted skin, rose to lead Ranger campaigns against both Comanche and Mexican forces. In 1848, Texas named Caldwell County in his honor. Almeron Dickinson, the scout who braved the Blanco thickets, wasn't so lucky. Less than a year later, in March 1836, he died at the Alamo. Records say he fired the final cannon shot before falling one of 189 Texian defenders. His death linked this small skirmish to the epic battles that created the Republic of Texas. But the Blanco fight was more than a prelude, it was a symbol of a violent cycle. Comanche raids and ranger chases didn't end here. They defined the frontier. Hämäläinen argues the Comanche weren't defeated in one decisive battle. They were worn down through loss after loss of land, warriors, and food. Swanson adds that each ranger victory fueled new policies, pushing native nations off their land and paving the way for Anglo control by the 1870s. As time passed, the names faded into legend. But the Comanche masters of the plains, fierce riders, and tight-knit families faced an unstoppable wave of settlement that wore down their strength. Even their enemies admired their courage. But admiration did not stop the loss. In honoring the bravery shown on both sides, we must also remember the wounds. This wasn't just a battle. It was a chapter in a larger story, one of courage, yes, but also of dispossession. What lessons do we carry forward from such blood-soaked ground?